What if I told you the cost of living crisis hits you long before you ever check your bank account? Because you feel it first. In the rent that jumps every year, in the electric bill that used to be annoying but is now genuinely terrifying, in that weekly grocery trip where somehow the total climbs higher even though you're buying less. Everywhere I look, people are working harder than they ever have. Longer hours, longer commutes, less time to breathe. Yet somehow it feels like we're all slipping backward. And it isn't because anyone is bad with money or making the wrong choices. It's because the entire system has shifted in a way most of us were never prepared for. So in this video, I'm breaking it all down. How housing got out of control, why utilities feel like a second rent, how groceries became one of the biggest financial stress points in America, why credit cards turned into the only safety net millions have left, and the emotional weight all of this puts on people who are just trying to stay afloat. Inflation, fixed incomes, rising debt, retirement pressure, all of it connects. And once you see the full picture, the struggle so many people feel starts to make a lot more sense. And by the end of this breakdown, you'll understand why everything feels so expensive and why it's not your fault. The quiet warning signs. This is the moment people realize the system isn't built for them anymore. It doesn't show up in one big dramatic event. It shows up in the way people breathe a little heavier at the end of the day. It shows up in the way they sit in their car after work and just stare at the steering wheel before heading home. It's a slow kind of exhaustion that starts long before any bill hits the mailbox. You hear it from younger workers all the time. They're tired in a way that has nothing to do with laziness. They're grinding every day, trying to build something, trying to follow the steps they were told would lead to stability. And then someone older steps in with that familiar line, just work harder, just do what we did, as if the world hasn't changed in 40 years. But it has. Wages have barely moved since the late 70s, and essentials have climbed to levels that don't even feel real anymore. Rent, groceries, healthcare, car payments, everything rising faster than any paycheck can keep up with. And it leaves people drained not because they aren't trying, but because they're trying in a system that no longer rewards the effort the way it used to. This is the exhaustion you feel in your shoulders when you sit down at night. The kind where you aren't just tired from your day. You're tired from the constant pressure of trying to stay ahead in an economy that keeps pushing back. And all of it builds toward the place where the crisis hits the hardest, the part of life that should give you stability, but now does the opposite. And that's where things really start to break down. Housing, the breaking point. This is where most Americans finally feel something is deeply wrong. Housing used to be the part of life that grounded you, a place where you felt secure, a place you could come home to and breathe for a minute. Now it's the thing that keeps people up at night. I hear stories all the time from people who are doing everything right and still can't keep up. One woman talked about how she pays her rent, pays her car, pays her insurance, and then just sits there staring at the rest of her bills trying to figure out what gets paid late. She said she either eats or she pays her bills. And even then, she feels like she's still falling behind. That is the reality for millions of people right now. The median home price in this country sits somewhere around $410,000 to $420,000. That number barely feels real anymore. It used to be the kind of price you saw in upscale neighborhoods. Now it's the average across the entire country. And for people who want to rent instead of buy, things aren't any easier. A simple one-bedroom is averaging around $1,500 a month nationwide. And in places like Miami, San Diego, New York, Boston, that same tiny apartment jumps to $2,500 or even $3,000. People aren't being dramatic when they say they can't afford to live. The cost of housing has grown into something that doesn't match the average paycheck anymore, and it didn't happen by accident. After the housing crash in 2008, construction slowed way down and never really bounced back. The country has been short on homes ever since, which means more people chasing fewer places to live. While that gap grew, investors started buying up the kinds of homes regular people used to buy as their first chance at stability. Those homes got turned into rentals, prices went up, choices went down, then mortgage rates changed. For years, people got used to rates that felt almost unreal. Then suddenly they jumped to 6 and 7%. Overnight, the same home cost hundreds more every month, even if the price didn't change. And in places like Florida and parts of Texas, insurance costs have exploded because of storms and climate risks. Families who could barely afford a home payment now have an insurance payment stacked right on top of it. It all adds up to the same feeling. People working hard, trying to do the right thing, trying to get ahead, and constantly feeling like housing is this wall they just can't climb. Renting doesn't give them breathing room. Buying feels impossible. And the idea of owning a home, building equity, building stability, feels like something that belongs to another generation. And the truth is, even when someone finally manages to get a place of their own, that isn't the moment things get easier. Because once you have the keys, and once you think you're finally safe, a whole new set of bills starts showing up. And for a lot of people, those bills hit even harder than the rent itself: utilities and the second rent. This is the bill that hits harder than any recession chart ever could, because it isn't just about paying for a place to live anymore, it's about everything that shows up around it. The bills you can't escape, the ones that used to be manageable and now show up looking like another rent payment. There was a woman in Texas who shared her electric bills from last summer: $560 in June, $650 in July, and a projection that August would push her past $2,000 in just 3 months. She wasn't living in a big house or leaving the air conditioning blasting nonstop. She was trying to cut costs everywhere she could, cooking at home, keeping the lights off, just trying to get through the heat. And it still wasn't enough. Stories like hers are becoming more common, especially in states where the weather hits hard and the power grid struggles to keep up. The national average might say $150 a month, but that number doesn't mean much when real people open their statements and see 400 or 500. It's the moment when just staying cool or staying warm becomes a financial decision. And electricity is only part of it. Water bills have climbed in cities across the country. Broadband has gone from a nice extra to something every household needs. Car insurance renewals are landing in mailboxes with numbers people have never seen before. It all adds up little by little until suddenly you realize you're paying as much for utilities and basics as you are for the roof over your head. It feels like a second rent. One you never planned for, one you can't negotiate, one that keeps rising no matter how carefully you manage everything else. And while that pressure alone is enough to wear anyone down, there's another part of everyday life that drains people even more. Something millions of Americans rely on just to make a living, and that's where the commute trap comes in. The commute trap and the car expense crisis. Here's the moment people realize their paycheck is gone before they even earn it. It happens the second they sit behind the wheel in the morning, already tired before the day even starts. I think about the man who shared his routine, driving almost 4 hours every single day, 6 days a week. By the time he finally gets home, the sun is down, the day is gone, and whatever small thing used to bring him joy is now out of reach. The job pays him, but the commute takes just as much right back. And that's a story a lot of people relate to. Car costs have turned into something that barely feels affordable anymore. New car payments sitting above $700 a month, plenty of people paying over $1,000. Even used cars, the thing people used to rely on when money was tight, are still stuck at prices that feel completely out of place. Then there's everything wrapped around the car itself. Gas that eats up a chunk of every paycheck, insurance that climbs higher each year for reasons no one can explain, repairs that pop up at the worst possible times and never cost what you hope they will. These aren't optional expenses. These aren't luxury upgrades. They are the price of simply being able to get to work. Most of the country doesn't have trains or buses that take you where you need to go. There's no easy alternative. If you want to earn a living, you have to own a car. And the car becomes this quiet drain that pulls money from every direction. It's another monthly burden stacked on top of everything else in a life that already feels stretched thin. And even with all of that, there's still another place where the cost of living hits people even harder. a place where every single person feels the squeeze, no matter how careful they are or how well they plan. The grocery struggle every American feels. If you want to see the cost of living crisis up close, walk into a grocery store. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live. The moment you step inside, you feel it. The prices on things you've been buying for years suddenly look out of place. The total at the end somehow climbs higher, even though the cart feels lighter. You see people standing there for a moment trying to make sense of it, pretending not to be shocked even though everyone is feeling the same thing. I think about the young woman who shared her routine. She tries to save a little from every paycheck. And then the reality of life hits. Food, gas, basics. 2 or 3 days later, she pulls the same money right back out. Not for treats, not for anything fun, just to get through the week. That isn't bad planning. That's what happens when the essentials move faster than your income. The numbers only confirm what people already feel. A single adult can spend $300 to $400 a month on groceries without buying anything extravagant. Prices didn't fall after the pandemic. They slowed down, but they landed at a higher level and stayed there. Every trip to the store feels like a reminder that your money doesn't stretch the way it used to. And for some people, it's even harder. In a lot of neighborhoods, especially low-income or rural ones, big grocery stores have shut down or moved away. Those areas turn into food deserts. No fresh produce, no real choices. Families end up shopping at dollar stores or convenience stores because it's all that's nearby. Healthy food becomes something you have to travel for, and when you add the cost of gas or limited transportation, it feels even more out of reach. So you see people pacing the aisles with a calculator in their head. You see parents quietly putting things back because the bill is already too high. You see older adults on fixed incomes choosing what will last longest instead of what's healthiest. The grocery store, something so routine, has become one of the most stressful parts of the week. And when the basics take this much out of a person, there's only one place many people turn to next. The thing they wish they didn't need but end up relying on anyway, the debt survival loop. This is the trap millions fall into without even noticing it happening. It doesn't start with something dramatic. It starts with life being too expensive and the paycheck not stretching the way it used to. It starts with groceries that cost more than last month, a utility bill that jumped out of nowhere, a car repair that couldn't wait. People reach for their credit cards not because they want something extra, but because they have run out of room everywhere else. For a lot of Americans, the credit card has become the thing that keeps the lights on. It fills the gap between what life demands and what the bank account can handle. That's why credit card balances across the country have climbed past $1.2 trillion. And it isn't from vacations or new TVs. Most of it comes from basic everyday life. Food, gas, rent gaps, bills that showed up before the paycheck did. The problem is the interest. With rates sitting above 22%, the balance grows even when you're doing everything you can to stay responsible. You tell yourself you'll pay it off, you make the minimum payment, you wait for the number to drop, and then the next month arrives and the total looks almost the same. The interest keeps stacking itself on top, and suddenly you're paying for things you bought months ago. Healthcare pushes people into this cycle even faster. A routine checkup that costs more than expected, a prescription that isn't fully covered, an emergency that shows up at the worst time. Even with insurance, the bills pile up, and when they do, people use the one tool they have left. The card in their wallet, the card that turns a $100 appointment into something that lingers for months or even years. Over time, debt stops feeling like a problem and starts feeling like part of life. Everyone carries some. Everyone whispers about it. Everyone tries to juggle it in the background. But it still weighs on you. It sits in your chest. It follows you into every decision. It makes the future feel smaller than it should. And as heavy as the money is, it isn't the part that hits the hardest. The real weight shows up in the mind, in the way people talk about their future, and in the way they carry themselves through the day. The emotional and psychological toll, this is the cost no one sees but everyone feels. It settles in quietly, not all at once, It builds over time until you wake up one day and realize you're tired in a way that sleep doesn't touch. It's the kind of tired that sits in your chest, the kind that comes from years of working hard and still feeling like you're slipping backward. People talk about it all the time now. They put in long hours, they take on extra shifts, they come home late and wake up early. They know they're doing everything right, yet life keeps getting heavier. It's the feeling of pushing as hard as you can and still not getting ahead, and after a while it wears you down. That kind of pressure doesn't stay in your wallet, it shows up everywhere else. It affects relationships, it creates tension in homes that are already stretched thin, it steals the energy people used to have for the things they enjoyed, it changes the way they talk about themselves. Financial stress has a way of shrinking your confidence. It makes you second-guess decisions you used to make without hesitation. Then there's the future. People used to plan their lives in steps. Save for a home, build some security, retire with something to show for all the years of work. Now those steps feel further apart. They feel harder to reach. The American dream hasn't disappeared, but it has drifted just far enough that a lot of people feel like they're always one step behind it. And even though people don't say it out loud, you can sense how heavy it is. The mix of responsibility, frustration, pride, and exhaustion. The feeling of wanting a better life, but being worn down by how much energy it takes just to stay where you are. All of this leads to one bigger truth about what the cost of living is doing to everyday people. And that brings us to what all of this really means when you step back and look at the whole picture, the systemic imbalance. When you step back and look at everything together, you start to see how connected it all is. Housing getting more expensive, utilities climbing higher, groceries taking a bigger piece out of every paycheck, wages that barely move, debt that grows in the background. It all blends into one long story that people are living through every single day. And the more you see it, the more you realize this isn't something people caused for themselves. It's the way the system is built now. The cost of living in this country isn't just a number. It's the stress people carry home at night. It's the hours lost working overtime just to stay level. It's the plans that keep getting pushed aside because life's basic expenses take so much energy. It's the feeling of trying your absolute best and still feeling stretched thin. That is the real impact, not just the bills, but the weight they put on a person's spirit. Understanding this doesn't fix everything, but it changes the way you see yourself in the middle of it. You stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you're the only one struggling. You realize millions of people are dealing with the same pressure, the same rising costs, the same sense that things got harder without warning. That kind of understanding gives you room to breathe. It lets you make choices that protect you instead of choices that drain you even further. And underneath all of it, there's a deeper truth that most people feel, even if they don't say it out loud. The real crisis isn't the money. It's what the money does to your mind. It's the constant tension, the tiredness that builds, the way it makes people doubt themselves, the emotional toll that comes from trying to hold everything together in a world that keeps getting more expensive. So think about which part of this hits closest to your own life. Maybe it's housing, maybe it's groceries, maybe it's the feeling of running in place. Whatever it is, just know you're not the only one carrying it. And if this breakdown helped you see things a little more clearly, stay connected and subscribe. You're not alone navigating this economy.